Good morning, afternoon, or evening, my dear language learning master. Well, hope you're doing great, first of all. Yeah, and I welcome you to episode number 3 of the Language Input Podcast, all right, in which I'm going to address yet one more hot topic or yet one more important topic when it comes to the language learning process, all right? And yeah, before we get started, I just wanted to remind you that, leave your comments down below on YouTube if you're listening to this podcast, on what you think about this specific topic, or if you have any questions regarding language learning, so you give me ideas to record future episodes. All right. So that way you're giving me ideas, and I'll be answering your questions. So it's a win-win situation. Okay. And yeah, with that being said, let's get into episode number 3. And in this episode, I want to talk about the use of subtitles. So the question is, are subtitles useful? Is it a good practice? Is it a good idea to use subtitles when watching series, a movie, or whatever it is? Well, before talking about my opinion on the use of subtitles, I'm gonna break them down into 3 different types of practices. All right. Number 1 is to watch a series or a movie with subtitles in your native language. Number 2 is subtitles in the target language, and number 3 is no subtitles at all. Okay. And yeah, I think there might even be a 4th type in which people are trying to learn a 3rd or 4th language, and they're using subtitles in their 2nd and 3rd language. But that to me is pretty much the same as to using subtitles in their native language, right? Because the idea behind it is the same: to use subtitles in a language they're more proficient at. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about those 3 practices: native language subtitles, target language subtitles, and no subtitles at all. Okay. So let's start with native language subtitles. In my opinion, this practice is not helpful at all. So I don't recommend it. Not at all. I mean, I understand the reason behind it because, for instance, in Spain, I know a lot of people who want to learn English and they watch series, movies in English. And they tell me, I'm watching a lot of series, movies in English with Spanish subtitles. Because, they have the hope that just getting exposed to the language is going to help them, learn new words or new structures or, get better at English somehow. But the problem here for me is your brain is going to go with that it knows best, which is your target language. Yeah, Spanish in my example, right? So you're not actually learning the language. You're understanding the message exclusively thanks to the subtitles in your native language, right? And remember that the idea behind language learning, to put it in a simple way, is to connect the sound or the word manzana with the image of an apple in your mind, and not with the Spanish equivalent of the word apple. Okay. And when we're using subtitles, that's a simple way of putting it, but that works for isolated words, for structures, for sentences, and for the language as a whole, okay? So when we're using subtitles in our native language, we're not achieving that because we're understanding the message thanks to the Spanish part, so we're not really connecting those English words. I'm always talking about the example I mentioned before. We're not really connecting those English words that the actors are saying to the mental image or the mental representation of what they mean. We're just linking them to the Spanish equivalent. And that's why, that also is one of the causes of having to translate everything in your head when you're trying to speak in a different language, right? Can you relate to that feeling? Yeah. And I said that I understand why people use that because, in my example, in the example of Spanish people wanting to learn English, if they're beginners, for instance, I always recommend cartoons, comics, and so on. So, but I understand that they're not the most interesting resource for an adult. Okay, most of the times. So people want to learn English in this case while having access or while accessing interesting and complex resources like series or movies, like I said. And I understand that, but you also need to understand that it's not going to help you learn English, okay? Because you're not, like I said, you're not really linking or connecting the sounds in English you're hearing or you're listening to with the mental representation of them. You're not understanding what they mean. You're just reading the translation in your target language. So yeah, definitely not a good practice. All right. Let's go now with practice number 2, which is to use subtitles in your target language. So in my example, English subtitles. All right. So like English sound and English subtitles. In this case, I think it's a much better practice. Okay. So it can actually be useful. All right. But in my experience, I personally, if I'm watching a series or a movie which has some visual action that you need to follow, I personally prefer not to use subtitles. Okay, because just my attention just goes all over the place, and I'm trying to keep up with the plot, with what's going on, and read the subtitles at the same time. So I can really focus on one specific thing. So I prefer not to use them when watching a series or a movie. But feel free to do it if that works for you. Okay, because that's actually a good practice. That's actually gonna help you learn the language, because you're hearing or you're listening to the language and you're reading the words at the same time. Okay, and if you're able to understand the words, that means that you're probably on an intermediate or advanced level. So your English is, in my example, your English is good enough to understand words. So the subtitles are gonna help you give meaning to those sounds that you're listening to. I hope it makes sense. Okay. So yeah, exactly. So because you're reading target language words or target language structures, you do connect those words or those sounds with the mental idea or the mental representation of what they mean. Okay, I think this is a bit hard to explain, but I hope it makes sense, guys. And if not, as usual, feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below, and I'll be happy to deep further into it or to give you more details about what I mean, because I'm trying to make myself understood, but as I'm speaking, I realize that it might be hard to grasp or to understand what I'm saying, because it's a bit confusing. But anyway, I hope you understand what I mean. And and then the final practice is not to use subtitles at all. And that's the one I prefer, because I have one rule of thumb, which is like when I'm in doubt, I always go with the more natural approach, or what I think is more natural. All right, and to me, just watching something with no subtitles or nothing, it just looks to me like the more natural thing to do. Okay. And like I said, when I'm watching series or documentaries, my attention is just focused on the series, on understanding what's going on following the plot, on what's going to happen with this character or that one. How they're going to find a solution to their problem or whatever it is. Okay. So that's the one I recommend. Of course, if you don't use subtitles at all, you got to find resources that are at the level you're at in that particular moment. So if you're starting out with a language, you're not going to be able to understand series, obviously, right? So my advice would be to start with, as usual, cartoons, read comics, and you'll move on little by little to more complex and interesting resources like harder cartoons or documentaries or young adult books, etc. yeah, if you go to my website naturallanguages.com, you'll find a free ebook with ideas according to different levels. Okay. So yeah, that's pretty much my opinion on the use of subtitles. And finally, I also want to talk about a little exception to this rule or to this opinion, which is something that I've used several times. So, once I want to try something, and I want to try reading, listening to an audiobook and read the book at the same time. Okay? And in that case, I think it's really helpful, because when you're listening to an audiobook and reading the book at the same time, there's no visual action that you need to follow. I mean, you're just reading the text and listening to the audiobook at the same time, right? So you don't need to focus your visual attention on two different places like it happens with a series or a movie. Okay, I hope it makes sense again. So yeah, that's something you can try as well. For example, I did that with Harry Potter in Portuguese. I read the books in Portuguese while listening to the audiobook at the same time. Okay. And yeah, that way it's the same example as I said with series and movies, except you don't need to pay visual attention to two different places at the same time, which is gonna which is gonna make things easier for you. Okay, so in cases like that one, in which your attention does not get divided, you can go ahead with it. And I actually enjoy the idea, because you're getting oral input and written input at the same time, and it's not disturbing your language learning process at all. So that's actually something you can try, guys. And yeah, as usual, let me know in the comment section below if you think this is a good idea. If you agree with me, if you don't, that's totally fine. I'm always open to new ideas, and as long as we're respectful, feel free to let me know if you disagree with me, if you agree with me, of course, as well. And yeah, before we wrap things up here, like I said at the beginning, just let me know if you have any questions regarding the language learning process, because you'll be giving me ideas. I would truly appreciate it, and I'll be helping you at the same time. Okay. So yeah, with that being said, this is episode number 3 of the Language Input Podcast. All right, and if you're watching me on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my videos, and if you're starting to think outside the box a little bit when it comes to language learning, because unfortunately, we've all been taught the same way when it comes to languages. We've all suffered through what I call the traditional grammar approach. Alright, so yeah, thank you in advance for watching this episode. Yeah, and if you came all the way here, I want to thank you even more. Alright, and yeah, to those 2-3 little things that were a bit hard to explain, I hope they made sense. I hope I explained myself correctly. If I didn't, let me know in the comment section below as well, and I'll try to answer your questions as well, to clarify things in a better way. All right. So yeah, thank you, and have a good day, my dear language learning master, wherever you might be, and I'll see you in episode number 4. Bye bye.